Good morning.
Yeah.
Hello. Yes, we can hear.
So my name is Akom. That is my last name. My first name is Christian. Usually I like to turn it around. It's a very interesting read. I once went somewhere and I mentioned Christian Akom, and the person looked at me and asked, "Did you say Christiana?" I was actually
I'm going to talk a bit about stress, and then I'll talk also about managing your emotions, especially with breathing. So I'll talk about what stress is and all that, and then we'll take it from there. I'd like to ask a few questions to make what do we understand by stress? What do we know it to be? How do we see it? Anybody at all? Hello?
It's pressure.
Pressure.
Yes.
By pressure. Hello?
Yes,
Hello.
I mean,
Yes. So I'm asking, what do we mean by pressure?
extra things to do above average.
Okay. Extra things to do above average. Okay. And then what else? Any other person? Let's try and make it as interactive as possible. Otherwise, I become a preacher man.
Someone in the chat says the response of the body to external stimuli.
Good. So basically, when we talk of stress, then we are looking at a number of things. One, how the body responds to events, things, situations, circumstances that we find threatening or challenging. That is one. Or it is also any circumstance that goes beyond our coping abilities. So we realize that we find ourselves short of the resources that we would need to manage that particular situation or event or occurrence. And that is what stress is. So basically, we work with these two explanations or understanding of stress. And when we have that understanding, it gives us a good appreciation of what stress is and how it can affect us. Right. So with that understanding, now let's look at one or two other things about stress. As we know, and as we say usually in our usual conversations, oh, I am stressed, I am under stress and all that. Let's note that stress itself is not necessarily a disease on its own, but then it sets the conditions or it sets the fertile ground for other diseases and illnesses to set in. So that is it about stress. With what I've said so far, then we might say that stress is actually a bad thing, isn't it? Hello?
Hello. Yes, please. And a few more responses in the chat.
Okay.
Someone says stress is a situation beyond our control. Another person said stress occurs when we perceive a situation or demand as challenging, overwhelming, or threatening. It is a natural reaction that prepares our body and mind to cope with perceived threats or pressure.
Right. So basically, that's it. So we would generally see stress as bad. But then there's some good side to stress. What happens with the good stress, which we call eustress, is that it prepares us for action. So you realize for athletes, before they engage in an event, if the person is a sprinter, for instance, just before the race starts, you feel, your body changing, your heartbeat increases and all that. You may sweat a little and all. All these things are the body's way of preparing you to manage the situation. So it is preparing you for action. You are ready to act. You are ready to execute a task. The same way if you are going for an interview, or even when you are meeting a girl for the first time, somebody probably, you've interacted with online and you have to meet the person for the first time, or even someone you interact with, and in case you want to propose to the person, so you're a guy, you want to propose to the girl, you feel some, agitation, a little bit of fear mixed with confidence and all that. That is the good stress. It prepares us for action. Same thing when you're going to write an exam, you're like, yeah, I've studied. That's for this exam. Sure, I'll make it. But then once a little doubt comes in there, like, no, I'm prepared, I'm ready. That is the good stress. And it helps us manage a lot of the difficulties that we encounter. Now, let's look at the other side of stress, which is distress, the bad stress. And that is where you feel overwhelmed and overtaken by events, and such that you are unable to meet the challenges that you face. So generally, when we talk of stress, then we are talking about the bad stress. That is the distress. And that is what most people refer to when they talk about stress. Now let's look at one or two things about how stress affects our body. You remember that when we were talking about stress, we said one of the understandings or definitions or meanings of stress is how the body responds to demands that are put on it. So there's what we call the general adaptation syndrome, or which is the stress response. And it has 3 stages. The first stage is alarm phase. And that is our immediate reaction to a stressor. So now let's look at a scenario like this. 2 people on opposite sides of a door. One wants to push the door open. The other is also keeping the door closed. So there are 2 opposing forces. The alarm phase is such that when you are in the room, you are the person preventing the door from being opened. You are ready to face the challenge that is meeting you. So you are behind the door, keeping it shut. And then the person on the other side of the door wants to open it. So then they are pushing it open. So at the alarm phase, you are ready. You are waiting to meet the challenge, the difficulty. Then it continues. So you are pushing to keep the door shut. The other person is pushing to keep the door open. And then it continues for a very long time. So from the alarm phase, you get to the resistance phase. And that is where you try to adapt to the stresses you are exposed to. So in using your strength, you may want to add your weight to keep the door shut. And yet the person is still pushing. And at that point, you are fine. So alarm phase, your immediate reaction to the stressor. The resistance phase is how the body adapts to the stresses it is exposed to. And then if it continues and continues, now your strength may wane. You may get tired. You will get exhausted. And that is the exhaustion phase. And unfortunately, at this phase, our immune system breaks down. So when the body is preparing or at the alarm phase, when it is meeting the stressor, the body goes through some changes, some physiological changes. One, heart rate would go up. You may perspire a little. Blood is shunted. So should I say blood is redirected to certain areas. So the skeletal muscles get more blood because the body is being prepared for action. And that is what we call the fight or flight response. And it's how the body adjusts to threats and situations that it sees as threatening. So the body will prepare you either to fight the threat or to run away from it. And for this, you need to mobilize all the body's resources to meet this challenge. So, as I mentioned, blood is being redirected. You use up more glucose in the blood because you need energy to send to the muscles to act, either to fight or to run. So you end up using the body's resources. Now, everything is there, ready for action. The stressor is still there, so you are trying to resist it, as I give in the analogy of someone pushing a door open and the other one resisting the push. So they also try to stop the door from opening. When it continues for a long time, now you are exhausted. So the body's natural defenses would now get used up and you don't have anything again. So you become exhausted. And that is where your immune system would break down. And so you become compromised to lots of illnesses and diseases and other conditions, other health conditions. So you may be prone to some heart disease because remember, your heart was in overdrive for a very long time. And as one of my colleagues will say, even Akosombo machines go off once in a while. They may turn off one turbine while the other 5 work, and then gradually it moves from one turbine to the other. So even that one, they have rest. So you can imagine where you are consistently and constantly being bombarded. You are consistently and being bombarded, and now you have used up all your resources. And so now you are open to attack because the attacking forces haven't given up and they are still there. And that is how come at the exhaustion phase, the immune system breaks down and we are compromised. Now let's look at some sources of stress. What gets us stressed? Where does the stress come from? Now I'll talk about 4 things. First, I'll talk about family. We all have families, either biological or social, or even professional. So we have families that we interact with, families that we deal with, families that we live with, families that we come from. So that is it with the family. Now, how does the family become a source of stress? Sometimes due to some pressures that are put on us, due to other expectations of other family members. And sometimes we are unable to deal with this. And let me give you 1 or 2 examples. So you are a young person, possibly finished university, and now you are regarded as a full-blown adult. Then you do national service for 1 year within a Ghanaian setting. When you are done, everybody's looking at you. Every morning they look at you in a very funny way. And the thinking is, now you have to go get a job. You have finished school, you've done national service, you are a full-blown adult. Nobody has to take care of you. You have to be able to take care of yourself. And this is a case where you've applied for some jobs, you are trying some 1 or 2 businesses on your own, but things are not working out. And you are being given excessive pressure. So the family then, in this instance, has become a source of stress. And even when there are some people within the family who can assist in one way or the other, they are not doing it. And yet you are expected to magically, some way, somehow, come up with a job. So you try some small businesses, you may try some trading, doesn't work. You may try to offer some services, it doesn't work. In the meantime, you have also sent applications out and all that. You still haven't had any responses. You try to, mobilize people and do some extra classes, do some teaching, and no one is patronizing it. Then you realize that you are faced, one, with managing yourself, taking care of your daily needs because you need money. And then two, the family is giving you pressure and they think you are lazy. And then they keep passing funny comments and making disparaging remarks about you. So at this point, that is where the family becomes a source of stress. Next, I'll talk about work. So in this case, work stress tends to affect a lot of us. There are some deadlines that are virtually impossible to meet. And yet you are expected some way, somehow, to be a magician and do some magic. Then you are under a lot of strain because everything is being pushed on you. So you are supposed to complete all tasks that need to be completed. That is one. Two, sometimes the work situation is such that you don't have all the resources you need to do the work, and yet you are expected to become a magician and do that one as well. So you realize that now you are being given some weight to carry when your shoulders are not broad and strong enough to carry that weight. And yet you are expected to become a magician and manage all these things. So then work has become a source of stress. Also, sometimes the work culture, communication at work and all that. You have a superior who wouldn't listen to any suggestion you give concerning tasks that have to be completed. So that also becomes a source of stress. So even when you have a good idea that would move the organization forward, your superior, your supervisor, your boss, your manager doesn't want to listen to you. So you are always relegated to the background. It becomes a source of stress. Then we have the environment, neighbors, friends, acquaintances, and stuff like that. And in this case too, people have certain expectations of you. People have certain ideas about you. People have interesting, and I'm using the word interesting in inverted commas, perceptions about you. And all these tend to place demands on you. So you may have some neighbors who will come knocking every morning. Oh, Brakweku. Oh, Sister Ama. Oh, Mebano. School. Then you being a generous person or out of magnanimity, so you give something. And now you have become a regular supplier of their morning transportation and feeding every day. And this is a case where you have limited resources. You have your own immediate and external family to take care of. And then this neighbor is always coming to you. Then there's the one who always come and collect salt. Every time. Oh, that is also there. Then you have friends who come to you asking for all sorts and kinds of favors. I mean, some may even demand certain favors that require that you even compromise your integrity. All these things become sources of stress. And not that they come once or twice, but they keep coming. So it puts you under strain. Then the last one I'll talk about is ourselves. What is it about ourselves that gives us stress? Our expectations, our perceptions. So All your mates are married, and you are the only one amongst your year group who is not married, and everybody is looking at you in a very funny way. So it becomes a source of stress because you keep asking yourself, hey, so when am I going to get married? When will a girl say yes to my proposal? When will a guy come and say, I'm interested in you and I want to marry you? So it becomes a recurring thought. And as we say in Akan, kwadanda, because you are bothered by it, you are worried about it. Everybody who sees you and you keep criticizing yourself and asking, hey, so I'm the only one who is not married. Our perceptions, you finish school, you got a job, you're with your other colleagues, and in 2 years, they are riding in cars and you are still boarding trotro. And you keep asking yourself, so where did I pass? And then you are giving yourself unnecessary strain, unnecessary pressure, because you expect that you should be able to rock shoulders with them, forgetting that we all have different circumstances. And interestingly enough, sometimes you may even end up realizing that apparently whatever you are seeing the other person enjoying is not something they made themselves. Possibly as a parent, an uncle, an elder brother who perhaps has given them access to the vehicle that they are using, but you don't know about it. Or somebody has moved into a new house. So, hey, this person is doing very well. You don't know if it's family property or it's something that the person acquired by him or herself. And besides, what are the means that the person used? And yet you are sitting in your corner and beating yourself up. So that also becomes a source of stress to us. So if you look at it, we are putting unnecessary strain on ourselves. We are giving ourselves unnecessary pressure. So that is it. So now we've looked at 4 sources of stress: family, work, environment, and then ourselves. And these are areas from which stress comes from. Now let's look at how stress operates. And it's like a triangle. We have a stressor or an environmental stimulus. And then we have the negative thoughts, and we have the physiological arousal. So like the 3 points on a triangle, you have one at each point, and they can go in any direction at all. The stressor from the environment may lead to negative thoughts, and the negative thoughts may lead to physiological arousal. Or you have the environmental stimulus, the stressor, leading to physiological arousal, which then is accompanied by negative thoughts. So you realize that they can go in any direction at all. And these are 3 things that cause us stress. These are 3 things these are the dynamics on how stress operates. Now let's look at some signs and some symptoms of stress. So we have physical signs, we have social signs, and then we have the physiological ones. So let me start with the physical. There is poor vision, there is high blood pressure, you may even have a loss of sexual drive. You tend to have body pains all over. There's chronic fatigue, coronary diseases, etc. So because, remember, the body is always on high alert. It gets to a point, resources are used up. And so you have the body succumbing to the stress and giving us different signs. So for instance, high blood pressure. You have an extremely demanding boss at work. You see the person, you get scared, your heart skips a beat. And as you get stressed, you get worried, you get scared, certain chemicals in the body called neurotransmitters and hormones are released. And this affects how organs within the body function. So you have your heart rate going up consistently. And if you maintain that for a very long time, you're going to have coronary diseases. Your blood pressure is going to be extremely high. And then you have something that is bothering you. You have some worries. You have the stress. Lots of things are distressing you. So you go home to your wife, and she's happy to see you. You want to have some quality time. And unfortunately, as a man, you can't stand at attention because sexual drive is gone. The same thing, you're a woman, you're under so much stress. You go home, my husband is happy to see you, gives you a hug and says, "Welcome home, my darling." He wants to spend quality time. And unfortunately, you can't get in the mood. Sexual drive has gone down. You have people complain about body pains. So you are having headaches, you're having back pain, you're having waist pain. Not all of these pains are necessarily physiological. Some may be stress-induced because you are worried and all that. So you're getting pains. And remember, when blood pressure goes up, it also tends to have some ripple effects on other parts of the body, other organs of the body. So for instance, there's something called tension headaches. It's because of excessive muscle tension within the head. So the muscles in and around the head and then other parts of the body can lead to you getting the tension headaches. Same thing you have with migraine. And migraine usually tends to be a sign of stress. Then there's the chronic fatigue. Energy levels are gone. You don't have the energy to do anything. You feel fatigued all the time. You feel overly strained. You feel tired. You feel worn out. Then we have the social signs. You become withdrawn. You don't want to talk to anybody. You want to keep to yourself. Be by yourself. When people want to get into your space, it irritates you because you're not ready for anybody. You just want to be by yourself and with yourself, for yourself. Then people may also become moody. So a once pleasant person will now become moody and doesn't want to interact with anybody. Is not as pleasant as he or she is known to be. So the least thing, and they carry a frown on their face. Then there's also poor communication. So they will snap at you instead of taking their time to explain issues to you. They snap at you. Then we have bitterness in oneself. You feel bitter about yourself. You feel bitter about people around you, people you need to engage with, simply because you are under a lot of stress. So after our physical, after our social, now let's look at some signs and symptoms of stress within the spiritual gambit. So sometimes spiritually, you don't feel like praying because you get so worried, you get so preoccupied, you feel so bad about yourself. Now praying is even difficult because you feel some guilt. Then lack of forgiveness. So you're unable to forgive other people, you're unable to forgive yourself. And then you start asking yourself at all, what is the meaning of life? Because there's a loss of meaning in life. You don't even see the point of being alive and living. What is it? And as we ask in Akan, what's the big deal? What's all this? Why all the wahala that comes when living? Then you feel empty. So you doubt your self-worth and all that. So you feel empty in yourself. You feel like you're just existing and not living. So these are some signs and symptoms of stress. There are other ones, including anxiety, depression, insomnia, difficulty with concentration, And there's one we call irritable bowel syndrome. It's a medical condition, but it can also be precipitated by stress. And then use of alcohol and drugs and other inappropriate coping mechanisms. So somebody will start using substances, either alcohol, the person becomes a drunk, or they use other drugs, and they could be hard drugs and stuff like that. So these are some other effects, some other signs of stress, sorry. Now, what are the effects? And the signs will lead you to the effects. So physiologically, there's chronic illness. And as I mentioned earlier, breakdown of immune system. And once the immune system is broken down, which is the body's natural defense system against disease and illness, you are prone to all sorts and kinds of health conditions, from recurrent colds and coughs to other more serious chronic diseases such as hypertension and diabetes. Psychologically, you can have emotional breakdown. There's anxiety, you have disease spells, there's brain fatigue, you can have panic attacks. And then generally, it also affects performance in other facets of daily life. So from work to church, to family, to friends, whatever. It affects all areas of our functioning. Now, how do we cope? Or what are some ways that we can cope with stress? One, you can opt for the task-oriented option. And for this one, generally the person has coping resources, good ones. So you look at the situation, you look at the stressor, look at things you need to manage the stress or to overcome the stressor. So that way people become more proactive in managing the stress and overcoming the stressor. So if you have a boss who is overbearing, you can decide to prepare an action plan. So when you talk and your boss is not listening, you send the action plan to your boss, the person reads it, and is likely to come to understand where you're coming from. Next, we have anxiety. And this is where the person doesn't have enough coping resources. So they become anxious and they are unable to act. They can't do anything. Then we have anger. And with anger, the person blames the situation. So they are angry at themselves, they are angry at whatever it is, they're angry at every other person around them. Then we have defensiveness. And here the person will distort or deny the situation. So they may take a laid back stance, deny it that it's even existing and there's the stressor to deal with, or they will distort it. And the thing here is that usually they do that to make themselves feel a little safe and not feel compromised. Now, what are some of the management mechanisms that we can adapt to help ourselves manage the stress? So assertiveness training is one. And basically, assertiveness has to do with standing up for yourself without trampling on the rights of other people. And when we are assertive, it helps us manage ourselves better and other people around us, because then you're able to speak for yourself. And when things are not going well, you can have those issues and things well addressed, because you can talk about them, you can speak up when you are being pushed to the background. So assertiveness, we learn to speak up for ourselves. And this requires certain skills that professionals teach. But let me give you one or two of them. So first of all, consider the situation and then see how best to remedy it. And when you know how best to remedy it, you know how well to package your message. And by that, you're able to voice your issues. And then time management. So when you have tasks to complete and you don't have too much time, you do it such that you apportion the time to the various tasks. That way you don't become overwhelmed. And when you have tasks to do, you do them and do them on time, if not earlier. So that way you realize that you have time to do other stuff. So when demands are being placed on you, you just look at the time you have, apportion the time for the various tasks and demands that you have to meet, and then you execute them. That way it reduces the strain you'd have to face or you'd have to experience. Then there is nutrition. We need to eat well. Remember, stress affects the body and how it functions. So if we eat well, we give the body resources, we nurture the body, we make it stronger, and that way it's able to manage the stresses that it is put on it better and more efficiently. Then we have exercise, and that goes with keeping the body healthy as well. So when you exercise, your organs function better, you breathe better, respiration is improved, heart functioning is improved, because then now the heart gets exercise, it becomes stronger. Remember, the heart is muscle. And with muscle, as you exercise it and exercise it well, it becomes stronger and more resilient. So that one also comes in handy. Then you look at your thoughts. What kind of thoughts do you have? When you encounter situations, do you appraise them well? Do you have a good assessment of what the issues are? Or you tend to blow things out of proportion? So we look at how you process information, the thoughts and perceptions you have about issues that you have to manage or encounter. And in this way, if you have thoughts that are not helpful, that are consistently negative, then you are taught ways of managing those thoughts, stopping them, and then redirecting your thoughts to other more positive things. Then we have one other exercise that we teach, which is called progressive relaxation. What this exercise does is that it is aimed at relaxing all the muscle groups within the body. And remember, I talked about muscle tension and tension headaches and all that. So this exercise helps to reduce and take care of the muscle strain that we have. So the above I've mentioned are ways of coping with stress. Now, when I logged in, we're talking about some difficulties that someone was having with the wife. So these come with emotional issues. These come with worries. And remember, there is stress, there's excess emotion within that situation. So I'm going to talk about grieving as well. And usually, when we encounter situations that have overwhelmed us, we tend to go through some 5 stages. And these are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So now within these stages, I'll quickly go through and give us an understanding of what happens and the dynamics of grieving. So some people would go into denial. Oh no, this is not true. Oh, this can't be happening. You've lost your job. Oh no, it's a joke. It's a lie. This can't happen to me. It is not true. Usually that is a response to keep you at bay because the information, the issue, whatever it is too much for you to handle at that moment. So it serves as some sort of a buffer, a stopgap, a temporary reprieve from the worry, the issue, the emotions that will follow what difficulty you are encountering. Then you may have anger. So you are angry at yourself, you are angry at other people, you are angry at whatever situation it is. Because it is difficult for you to deal with, it's difficult for you to manage, it's difficult for you to acknowledge and understand that is what is happening. Then we have bargaining. And this is where you try to manage the situation such that you are putting in some conditions. And usually it's in our heads, it's cognitive, it's our thought, it's our thinking. So sometimes, you try to replay the situation and try to make changes. And we call it undoing, cognitive undoing. And then sometimes you pray to God and say, oh God, please, if you do this for me, I'll do that for you. So you end up bargaining with God, you end up bargaining with yourself. And possibly you end up bargaining with other people around to see how best you can manage the situation. And this one has to do with all sorts and kinds of losses. So from loss of a loved one, when a loved person dies, to loss of a job, to loss of some income, anything that we see as loss, we tend to go through these stages. Then there's a stage of depression. So you are depressed, you lose interest in usually pleasurable activities, you are having problems with your sleep, either you are sleeping too much or you are not having enough sleep, you stay away from people, you have difficulty with your diet, you are either not eating or you are eating in excess. And these are the signs of the depression. Now, take note, the four I have mentioned so far do not come in any particular order. And people may go back and forth between them. So somebody starts from anger, gets to denial, gets to bargaining, goes back to anger, comes back to depression, gets to bargaining and all that. But eventually, we all end up at acceptance. And that is where we have come to understand that truly the loss is there. Our loved one, our friend, our brother, our sister, our uncle, our mother, our father is no more. So we are not going to see the person any longer. We come to accept that truly you have lost your job. And so now you have to sit up, look at ways that you get another job or start something for yourself. We come to accept that my loved one, my partner, my boyfriend, my husband, my wife says it's over. I don't want you any longer. We come to accept that truly it has happened. And we need to pick ourselves up and move on from there. So with all that I have said, including stress and with the grieving, my concluding remarks are these. 1, be at peace with yourself. Be at peace with God. Be at peace with those around you. And you find yourself under any stress, under any strain, and you're unable to manage it, please consult a trained professional for help and assistance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Akom. So now we're going to invite participants. If you have any contributions or questions, and we want to make it a free-flowing discussion, but we're a little past time, so we want to dedicate about 10 to 15 minutes to this. So you can still type your questions in the chat. If you don't want to speak up, you can unmute yourself or raise your hand and then ask your question. So if you have a contribution to make as well, you can do so. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Akom, please, there's a question in the chat that says, how can I effectively manage stress when I am aware that the source of stress is either my workplace or my partner at home?
Okay. This is quite an interesting question. So the good thing about it is that you have identified where the stress is coming from. So if it's your workplace, what exactly within the work setting is giving you the stress? Is it because of your colleagues, or because of the work system itself, or because of your superiors? Now, first of all, you have identified what the stressor is. So you work on it. What do you do to change the situation, for instance? So if it's a superior who doesn't understand you, as I mentioned, find time, get to understand where the person is coming from. So find out, boss, I've realized that for some time, anytime I do any work and I bring it to you, you have a difficulty with it. Can I know exactly what it is about how I go about to do my work that makes you not pleased? And so I can work at it and make it better. You get it? That way, you are looking at what exactly the issue is. If it's co-workers who are the source of stress, find out what it is with the way you interact with them. Is it that they don't do their job as they are supposed to do? And so within the chain, everything comes and clogs up at your end. If that is it, you call them, draw their attention to it, and even suggest ways of making their work also better and more efficient. So you realize that at that point, they are doing their job, which would also have effect of helping you do yours and do it better. If it's other things within the work environment and the system, then you come up with ways, you suggest ways that you can go about it. And then, these works, what do you call it? Businesses and enterprises have suggestion boxes and all that. So you can put down your issues, your concerns, your thoughts and ways of improving things into the suggestion box. Or you can send your superior an email or a message. Boss, I realized ABCD, and I think we can tackle it. You can tackle this using XYZ. So let's look at how best you can do it. And then you can add some 1 or 2 things, even that you've managed to do in your own small way. That way, it shows how workable your solutions are. And then there's a possibility of it being adapted to make the work environment better. And then also, I talked about assertiveness. You should be able to speak for yourself. So all these things, if you're assertive, you're able to send information to your boss regarding things that are not going well, or your colleagues regarding things that are not going well. If it's a subordinate, it makes it even easier. Engage the person. Not that you engage the person, you're aggressive, no, but you are assertive with the person. Let the person know what it is that is making the work environment a stressful one, and then you manage it. If the person is your partner, all the better. Engage the person. Look at it. You have realized ABC. For instance, if you have a partner, so if you're a lady and your partner a guy, and ladies always complain that men leave things anywhere and everywhere. So you have the wives complaining that the husbands always want them to pick up after them. They come from work, they remove their shoes at the door. Next one, the coat is hanging on the dining hall chair. The next thing, the tie is on the sofa. Next one, his shirt is hanging on the TV. All these things are things that can be a source of stress. So what do? You engage the person and take the person through a routine. So you let them know, you know what, when you come, don't take your shoes off right at the door. Go straight to the room, undress, hang the things you are supposed to hang. The things that are supposed to go into the wash bin, you put them in. In this case, what you are doing is that you are helping the person learn new skills, because sometimes you may need to train and retrain and reorient people. So you do that. So when in that instance, you are engaging the person, letting the person know what the issues are, what is going wrong, and how to manage them. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have 2 more questions. The first one is, how can I manage stress when I have an autoimmune disease? and children with additional needs who are hyperactive. And then the second
Okay.
one, okay,
Mhm.
should I wait for the
No,
second
so add the second one.
Okay. The second one, the person says, I know someone who lost her mom a while ago, and she has been going through the anger and denial stage for some time now without moving on. How do we help her?
So the autoimmune condition is a health condition. What it does is that the body's defense system ends up attacking itself. So it's like your soldiers turning against you to fight you. And basically that's what autoimmune diseases are. And there are different kinds. I don't know the specific one. And then you have additionally children who are hyperactive. So as they say, two troubles, one God, double wahala. Now with the autoimmune disease or condition, what it is that you have certain medications, you are taught certain lifestyles to manage the condition better and make it easier to live with. Sometimes you can have excessive pain and all that. Sometimes you have deficits in your functioning. So I don't know which particular one it is, but these are the things. So you engage, so you take your medications, engage in those behaviors that will make you feel better and make sure that you are consistent at it. With the hyperactive children, look at the pattern, things that they enjoy, and let them do it more. So more task-oriented behaviors. Get them into productive things that they will spend a lot of time at. The thing with hyperactive children is that they have a lot of energy to burn. So we'll give them tasks that will require that they burn the energy, and yet the tasks are productive and beneficial to everybody involved. So for instance, if it is cleaning the house, you get them involved, and they will willfully and gleefully participate in the cleaning because it's a lot of activity. Go around, go and fetch water, bring water, we are going to scrub. They may even see the scrubbing as fun. So they may be playing with the scrubbing whilst doing the scrubbing, but then they'll still end up doing the scrubbing. We have to mop, they will help. We need to carry stuff, move things from one place to the other. They are happy about it because they are expending energy. So one way of managing children who are hyperactive is to get them engaged in tasks that will require that they burn all the energy, or they burn the energy that they have to expend. But if you give them reading, they wouldn't, because it's boring. It's not stimulating enough. So that is one of the things that you manage. And that will help you manage children who are hyperactive. Now to the lady who lost the mom. It is clear that the person hasn't gotten to the acceptance stage. So they keep going back and forth. It will take some time. Now, it depends. Not everybody is able to manage dealing with loss very well. So I don't know how long ago the mom passed, but at a point, the person would require the services of a professional. Because excessive grieving and grieving for too long is in itself an issue as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have one last question. Was two. Okay, two questions. How can you navigate a situation where you are aware of the source of stress for a friend who is unaware of it? And then how do you manage anxiety that is being caused by stress you cannot avoid?
Okay. So with a friend, you have noticed a source of stress for that friend. And being the friend that you are, you can draw the person's attention to it. Make sure that you communicate it in a way that the person doesn't feel offended. Let me give you an example. For instance, if it's a relationship thing for the friend, so in a case of a guy who has a girlfriend who is a source of stress to that guy, you draw their attention to it. Let them know A, B, C, D concerning this person. I've noticed it's giving a lot of stress because probably when we meet, you talk about it a lot. So if you have a partner who is over demanding and inconsiderate, and the person also feels overwhelmed about it, you draw their attention to it. And then you can brainstorm ways of managing that difficulty. And if it goes beyond your ability and capability, then you recommend that the person go see a professional. The second one, can you please remind me of the second question?
Yes, please. The question is, how do you manage anxiety that is being caused by stress you cannot avoid?
So stress that you cannot avoid, but you can manage. And depending on what it is, you know what it is that is bothering you. You know the dynamics of the situation. Now the question is, what can we do about it? How well do I deal with this? If it's causing you excessive anxiety, then it's a cause of concern. And what you need to do is look at it, how best you can adjust to it. And sometimes all it takes is for us to understand that, oh, okay, well, it will happen one way or the other, but I can still go through it. For instance, like the sun. Sometimes the sun is up high, very bright, and it's scorching. We can't run away from the sun, but we can get an umbrella or find some shade where once in a while we'll go into the shade to avoid the scorching of the sun. Same thing, you can't avoid the stress, but you can respond to it in a better, more efficient way that will reduce its impact and reduce the anxiety. I'm done.
Thank you. Okay, I
You're
think there's
welcome.
one last question and then we'll have to wrap up. So the person
Okay.
says, the models of workplaces statistically have a bearing on stress. Has anyone thought of altering them?
All right. That's interesting. And I've been mentioning it. You know, sometimes the setup within the work environment can cause you some stress. So depending on what it is, as I've been mentioning, look at it, suggest ways it can change. Sometimes even simple seating arrangement can be such that it makes the work a bit more difficult than it should be. So you can even rearrange the seating arrangements such that now, you know, things can flow. For instance, if you have to pass one file from one person to another, and you're in one far corner, and the next person within the chain is on another far end, that means every time you have to get up and go, every time you have to get up and send it. Why not rearrange the seating arrangement such that you are close and you can easily just hand over the file, and then the person also processes it, and then it continues. So these are some of the things that we can do.
Thank you so much, Mr.
All
Akon.
right.
So we're going to wrap up here because we're a little beyond time. I want to thank everyone for staying with us to this point. And I want to remind everyone that the session was recorded so that it can be posted on the YouTube and for people to revisit it in the future if you missed something, or if you want to share with someone who was not able to join us, we'll make the link available. And we want to thank Mr. Akon once again for giving us his time this Saturday. And we'll also make his contact details available in case anybody wants to reach out to him for further interaction. The links to all of our platforms and social media are in the chat. We are on Facebook at Silent Scream Foundation. We're on LinkedIn, Silent Scream Foundation. Our website is also available in the chat. So you can visit us if you need us to connect you to mental health professionals, if you need to speak to a counselor, you can visit us. If you want to support the work that we do through volunteering as well, you can also visit us through these channels. And I want to thank everyone once again for joining us this Saturday morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. And we'll be back again next month with another mental wellness awareness training. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And the rest of your weekend. Thank you.
And thank you for having me as well.
Thank you for joining us.
All right. Bye.